Anti-lockdowners of Reddit. Why? Let's not forget anyone who's dealing with abuse in their homes. If I was in lockdown with my parents or exes, of course I'd want it over ASAP. For some, the choice is even tougher. Contract COVID-19, live on with no sense of self or no friends, family, or get murdered. Tougher still if there are kids involved, with no legal right to leave on their own. It amazes me how many people are unaware of this. Despite how ubiquitous domestic abuse is, if you're not affected by it yourself, you know someone close to you has been there. I know a couple of small business owners burning through their life savings. Meanwhile, my state hasn't been hit hard, and we've done so well at preventing the hospitals from being overloaded. Every nurse I know is furloughed. My wife is an RN. About 300 confirmed cases in the city in last week. Not one admission to ICU. The math isn't adding up in this crisis. We were sensible to take drastic measures but are not being sensible when now evaluating the actual threat. Deaths in our city per capita are down from a year ago. ICU admissions down. There is no pushback on reasonable measures. There is growing pushback on ignoring evidence. But isn't that just because you know people are doing the right thing and are in lockdown so aren't spreading it? It's like seeing the fire is going down because it's burned through all the oxygen in a room. So you open a door to go back in. Backdraft equals second wave. His statistic was more, pointing out that with 300 cases, not one was serious enough to go to the ICU. Basically, we are reacting as if this is the Black Plague and has a super high death rate confirmed case. But it really doesn't. I don't qualify for unemployment and really need a job. I'm anti-lockdown nationwide. I'm all for local lockdown. I'll explain what I mean. I live in a rural town in Oregon, USA. We have had 3 cases. We have to follow the same rules as Portland, who has had thousands of cases. Obviously, my town shouldn't have to follow the same rules as a huge city because it's not the same situation. There are towns all over the US that are hurting financially because they have to follow the same lockdowns as larger cities that are getting hit hard. In my little town, I've seen almost a dozen businesses shut down, citizens going homeless, and nobody can do anything about it. All this misery for 3 fucking cases, all of which were not hospitalized. Our only hospital is close to bankruptcy because there are no doctors operating or accepting patients. Obviously, Portland should lock down. It has a high population density and has a lot of travel in and out because of the large airport. However, my town shouldn't have to lock down when no one comes in or out, and no one has gotten sick. I'm not an anti-lockdowner, but I understand some of their perspectives. Some people live paycheck to paycheck. Confining them to their homes can be quite stressful. Even stimulus packages, unemployment benefits, and reduced pay might not get them through. There may be some people that hide their mental health issues, knowingly or unknowingly, behind social interactions. Being around people might make them really happy and forget certain concerns or prevent intrusive thoughts. Not being able to have this safety net can really mess with your mind. It's like a weighing scale. Do I choose my physical health over my mental health? Do I choose to risk infection over being homeless? It's not just your health. If you catch it, you might be fine. You will, however, spread it to others who might not be fine. The American response to this is selfish. It's about money. If you can do your job from home, you're probably not that concerned about a continued lockdown. If you're one of those people who has been laid off and actually makes more on unemployment, thanks to the federal $600 a week supplement, you're probably also not that concerned. But if you own a small business, or you lost your job but you don't qualify for unemployment, the longer the lockdown goes on, the closer you are to losing everything. Counter question: when should lockdown be lifted? When there's a vaccine that's less than 50% effective. When the only businesses that are left standing are Amazon, Walmart, and fast food restaurants, when an entire generation of kids miss out on a good education in their youth. When we cure death. Point being, there was an original plan for lockdowns and we're now past that. It's literally not possible to be locked down for much longer, and in the US it was never a complete lockdown, so what's the point? LA is locking down for another 3 months and the entire state of California has 3,000 deaths. That's ridiculous. The goalposts have definitely been moved. And who says a vaccine is going to be the solution? Look at the flu. People get it all the time and there is a yearly vaccine that a decent chunk of people get it. COVID, it is not going away. People are going to get it and some will die. Just like the flu. It doesn't make sense that all you hear is once there's a vaccine, we will be able to have mass gatherings, sporting events, concerts, etc. When the vaccine won't guarantee that the virus will just vanish. More people are going to die because of non-COVID reasons more than the virus itself if we continue the lockdown. Corona is a different kind of virus than influenza. Influenza morphs drastically and constantly, which is why there has to be a new vaccine every year. Corona doesn't do that, or at least the other coronaviruses we've already seen don't do that. SARS is a corona, and it's still SARS. The common cold is a corona, and it's still the common cold. Stable as fuck. COVID-19 is a corona that jumped to humans from bats. There are a few identifiable strains of it, but the virus, people have been saying for months that these strains are not appreciably different from one another, in that a vaccine that works for one strain will also work for another. We just have to set ourselves up to live with it for a year or so, or, as you say, decide that we're willing to let it spread a certain amount and know that that will mean a certain hash of people get very sick and some of them don't survive. The economy is not going to be the same, no matter what we do. Too much of it rides on travel, sports, and entertainment, which can only recover if majorities of people feel safe in crowds. The lockdown was about flattening the curve, slowing the spread of the virus so that hospitals weren't overwhelmed. It was never about reducing the total number of infections, at least not to any significant extent. It was about spreading out the same number over a longer period of time. The curve is now over-flattened. To turn a phrase, far from being overwhelmed. Hospitals in many areas are basically empty because there aren't enough COVID patients and they can't do any other business. Due to the lockdown, the lockdowns are causing real damage. The rest of the universe doesn't go on hold while we wait for COVID to blow over. People can't get elective treatments like getting pre-cancers removed, or get the regular checkups that catch early-stage cancers. The economic damage is real, too. A lockdown causes all sorts of economic damage, and will even kill other people in the long run. Thus, a lockdown that is more strict than the minimum necessary to avoid overwhelming hospitals is causing harm for no return. We currently appear to be well on that side of the line in most places. I'd say basically everywhere besides a few major cities. But there are probably some other exceptions. In those areas, we should be opening back up one step at a time, while keeping an eye on case totals. If things start trending upwards in a way that is likely to result in overwhelming healthcare, then stop reopening and maybe take a step back. But there is no reason to stay at the current level of lockdown given current conditions. Many more will die and the country as a whole will suffer from another Great Depression if we continue down a path of forced indefinite lockdown. We're already experiencing an all-time high in unemployment, and the longer we stay in lockdown, that number will only continue to climb. There are many people who could barely get by as it is. Now they've been forced to stay home and not earn a wage for an indefinite time. And just printing more money is not an alternative solution to no circulation. All it does is devalue our currency. And before y'all jump down my throat because Reddit, I 150% support social distancing and encourage wearing masks in public. I don't think we need to completely reopen all at once. Instead, reopen slowly, in phases, so that we can actually get circulation back in. Leave it up to the business on if they want to reopen their doors or not, and what policy they can take. Let people go back to work so that they can support themselves and/or their families. I concur. Why can't we have a plan to isolate the elderly and others at risk? Everything is so black and white when gray is the answer. So Sweden tried that, and the deaths amongst their vulnerable are so high that a group of scientists wrote a letter protesting a deliberate cull of the elderly to ensure the comfort of the young. Their deaths are only slightly higher than ours, and they're not shooting a thermonuclear bomb at their economy. People need money to feed their kids. I think people are vastly underestimating the global health impact and long-term deaths from the large influx of unemployment and small business losses, as well as poverty, drug addiction, and poor mental health that comes along with that. If the death rate is as low as many studies are showing, less than 0.5% of infected cases, then it's worth considering that staying closed is actually more harmful than opening, not 100%, but to some sustainable capacity. Staying locked down too much for too long has a very real possibility of ruining far more lives than COVID. The purpose of the forced lockdown was to flatten the curve. We've flattened the curve. Now we're essentially holding tens to hundreds of millions of innocent people under house arrest to protect a small fraction of our population who could continue to self-isolate if that's what they choose to do. Edit. I didn't post this to argue with 3 people at once. This is my viewpoint. Take it or leave it. I'm done responding in this thread. The point of lockdown originally, which I was all for, was to build up hospital and ventilator capacity, so it wouldn't be exceeded. You may remember flatten the curve from like a month ago. That has been done. Hospitals have been and are continually building up capacity. We have ventilators stockpiled and are making more every day. And this thing isn't nearly as bad as it was predicted to be. Obviously, coronavirus is a real issue, but that doesn't change the fact that all predictions have been overblown. I'm obviously not saying go make out with strangers, socially distance, wear masks, have at-risk people continue to stay home, do all that, but if we don't reopen soon, we're even more screwed than we are currently. Lockdown is going to kill more people than a virus. Elective surgeries. This doesn't just mean nose jobs. It often includes things like kidney and heart transplants, medically necessary back and neck surgeries, etc., are not happening. People are starving and going bankrupt. Drug abuse and suicide is going to skyrocket if it hasn't already. We cannot wait. If a vaccine is coming, and there is no guarantee we ever develop an effective one, it is at bare minimum months away from first production. Likewise, a working treatment is not guaranteed. We need to get real life back on track before this moves from a Great Depression-like state, how job loss is currently, to worse. Also, let's ditch the strawman. Yes, the media has managed to some morons who say they just want this to end so they can get haircuts or whatever. This is not about, oh, you're too weak to even sit at home and game. A vast majority of people who want to reopen wish to get to work, seeing if they can salvage any part of their largely ruined lives. While we are allowing people to go back to work, we can still be responsible. Have people who are high risk stay home. Everyone nationwide should mask up and socially distance. And if there is an outbreak, quarantine that area. But we cannot go on like this for much longer before people just start to say, F the law. I need to fix my life. And they are right. Let's at least have some responsible action instead of an across-the-board lockdown that won't last. Everyone who shits on anti-lockdown don't know any business owners. The PPP helped those who got it, but that was mostly so the employees can still get a paycheck. Businesses are closing every day and the recession we're heading for is gonna be bad. But people are going to die. Yes, true. Just like how people die of cancer, car accidents, drug overdoses, heart failure, and old age. So long as we don't throw society in full contact suddenly, we'll manage if we can get jobs back in place. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.